Hello, and welcome to Sacred Herbalism, the full moon segment of the Elder Tree podcast, where we explore how plants and fungi can support us to enter into a sacred relationship with life and the living world. I'm your host, Stephanie Hazel, herbalist, anthropologist, and a deep lover of this wild world. Let's walk into the moonlit forest together, into a world of magic, mysticism, psychedelic teachers, and, of course, the plants themselves. Are you ready? Happy full moon, everyone. This month we have Dr. Phiona Gitsham, who is an incredible doctor of Chinese medicine with 25 years experience, and she's also a spagyric alchemist. She makes really cool, interesting products. And we have had other alchemists on this show, but it's so interesting to have someone who can really speak richly and deeply to these two ancient and very different traditions. And in this conversation, she draws some amazing parallels in the key concepts in these two traditions. Probably for me, the most exciting part of this episode, she talks about her experience as lucid dreaming, as a lucid dreaming teacher and practitioner, where she actually can go and speak to plants in the dream world and learn from them and apprentice to them and ask them to teach her. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a really exciting thing to be doing with our time. I've known Phi casually for a long time. I think we first met about 15 years ago at an Entheogenesis Australis conference. I've also seen her at metagenics conferences, other wellness events, and then about 10 years ago I discovered that she'd been to theatre school and studied theatre with my housemate at the time. So she popped in a few times again in my years living with that friend Charlie. But wait, there's more. Phiona is not only a doctor of Chinese medicine and an experienced spagyric alchemist, she's also trained in functional medicine, nutritional genomic biochemistry, and astrology. She's trained in dance and music, and she studied as a chef and has also did a 4-year apprenticeship with a First Nations healer from the Cherokee Nation. She now has a business called BioHerboloQi, and she makes these beautiful products that blend deep listening to the plants with Chinese medicine, with spagyric alchemy. And she launched and designed that business in America, but she's moved back to Australia recently, and she's now living in the Byron Hinterland with her Alchemy Chinese medicine lab, making incredible products. She's also started practicing again in Mullumbimby if you're in that area, and you can find her website in the show notes with all her wonderful products, plus how to work with her as a lucid dreaming teacher or an astrology guide. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. She is one of my favorite kinds of guests who can draw from lots of different kinds of training and maps to come to something really juicy and unique. So this morning we have the lovely Phi Gitsham here, who is a wonderful synergy of traditional Chinese medicine and alchemy, and an incredible alchemist making award-winning products based on Chinese medicine that I've been really excited to try. And you've just relocated back to Australia after being in the USA, right, Phi?
Yes, I have. I'm really glad to be back. And thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So I'd love just to start by hearing a bit about what your medicine path has been like. Like, what has your journey with plants and with medicine been to get you to this interesting point you're at in your life?
Okay. I'll try and keep that brief because it's been a long journey. So I kind of started, I guess, in the 90s with connecting with plant medicine. Basically, I was born very sensitive. So I have a lot of sensitivities and allergies and can't use things with certain chemicals in the products and food allergies as well. And so that was a long path for me just into having to explore different health systems, different medical systems. And I came across Chinese medicine in my mid-20s. And before that, I had been doing a 5-year apprenticeship with a First Nations healing shaman, which was not based around entheogens. It was just based around herbalism and connecting with nature and energy healing with the hands and shamanic journey work. And So I started studying Chinese medicine and acupuncture. I just went straight into the degree after reading my first book about Chinese medicine because I thought, here's the system. I'd love to study something that's like herbal medicine and ethnobotany, but not Western herbalism as it's taught as being using the Western medical system of understanding pathologies or testing, and then just applying herbs instead of pharmaceuticals. So I was looking for something that was a little bit more alchemical, magical, and I found Chinese medicine, and so I dove into that.
What book it was that you read that made you
Yeah,
jump into the...
it's a really good entry point book. It's called Between Heaven and Earth. It's a
Yeah.
point that a lot of practitioners recommend. You're pointing to it on your book. Yeah, it's a book that a lot of practitioners recommend for patients who want to read something that's like almost a textbook on Chinese medicine, but it's not really a doctor training textbook. And it helps you get into yourself. It has all these questionnaires where you can learn about your constitutional factors and your five element, how to understand your personality as well as your body's energetic and physical medical manifestations within the five element system. And then after that, because I just keep studying lots of things, I just love studying and learning new things. And then I understood that I had a real affinity for making things. Like I was a chef too. That was one of my part-time jobs to get myself through university. And so I always loved making things. And because I'm so sensitive or allergic to a number of things, I often had to learn how to make my own products. And eczema was one of the things that I had making it really difficult for me to use body care. So I started studying cosmetic chemistry somewhere along the way because I thought, well, if I can just make a moisturizer and put all these great Chinese herbs for the eczema that I have into it. And at one point I bought a bulk cream. You can buy those base creams. And I put the herbs I needed to into it, but it was like a disaster because emulsifying oils and water is quite a difficult thing, and it's not really a beginner process. So it's actually not that hard. I should say it's not that difficult, but as a first step, it's not where you should start. So I ended up studying cosmetic chemistry, and I ended up studying spagyric alchemy as a really beautiful, natural method of extracting plants or minerals or things like eggshells or biologicals. You can extract anything really from nature. You do a full spectrum holistic extract and get all the medicinal gifts from within it that it has to offer. And you separate everything into three parts and put them back together in what's called the alchemical marriage. And I found that there's a lot of natural language between Chinese medicine and spagyric alchemy, even though, now spagyric alchemy is associated with Europe, but only because that's where it most recently developed. If you go back in time before that, there was massive developments made in the Islamic world during the Middle Ages. And then if you go back before that, there's evidence of spagyric alchemy being in Tibet and in China, not under the name spagyrics, because that only got added to the word alchemy in about the 1600s, but as alchemy. And if we go back before that, alchemy was had a heyday in Egypt. So it seems to have traveled around the world and developed different aspects of it, have developed and been brought forward through different cultures and different parts of the world's geography, through different peoples and ways of thinking have developed alchemy, and it's been everywhere. And I think it's because it's the observation of nature. Everything in nature transforms, and so do we. And I was looking for transformation of my chronic health issues and also my consciousness, and it just became this big, deep rabbit hole that brought together a number of different systems where I would see the common language in them. And it drew me closer and closer to understanding that nature is my teacher. And all these systems give me different languages for how to enter into a conversation with nature. But essentially, we're learning how does nature transform things and how does nature take nutrients from one thing and it ends up in another. Like we kind of tend to think that the mineral, vegetable, and animal realms don't transform into each other, but they do all the time. Like the mineral kingdom has iron in it, for example, and I have iron in my blood. So in this case, the mineral kingdom has transformed into the animal kingdom. And then perhaps after I die, my body will decompose and become fertilizer for some plants, and the plant kingdom and some of the minerals and nutrients in my body will be recycled in perhaps becoming a gemstone or a plant or an animal or part of, so in this way with nature, we can see how everything is ultimately transformable, and that is what alchemy is.
I love that. We are learning from the natural world and we're looking for these, in a way, universal truths, but it can be really helpful to find different conceptual maps and languages to be able to wrap our minds around them from different angles. I think that some people get confused when they're looking at too many different, TCM says this and Ayurveda says that and Western herbalism says this and science says this, and it seems at the surface level like it's very different. They're saying totally different things. But if we engage with them as conceptual maps and try to see like what is it behind this map that they're seeking to point to, then we can start to really get some interesting depths of analysis, I think.
Yeah, there's a line that I heard when I first started apprenticing with this First Nations healer who calls himself a shaman, so I feel like I can use the word shaman here. And he basically tried to really emphasize in the beginning that a shaman is not someone who is master of any particular system, although they may master systems, multiple systems, or one system. That doesn't really matter. The point is that the shaman is someone who is connected with nature, not just on the planet, but in the multidimensional cosmos of nature and consciousness, in a way where you can ultimately see the truth in the situation, and that the shaman is one who can see which system is true for which situation. So which system to apply, which language to apply here. And often that's really specific to the situation and the person or the patient, and to tap into their language that they're also bringing. Like if I'm talking about a patient, is to listen to them and to listen to all the information that I'm receiving while engaging with their situation as a helper, and to sort of tap into like what language here is connecting us to the truth of what's the medicine for them. And so as I never had this real commitment or devotee status to any of the systems that I learned. I mean, I'm very devoted as a student and I love to dive in deep and really learn and master multiple systems. But I also always understood that just like these atomic nutrients of nature that can be recycled into many forms, that these systems could also be recycled and translated into the other systems that I was learning as well. And so I guess in a way, I was kind of stalking what's that common language, what's the common truth here going on, like what's nature teaching me?
Yeah, beautiful. I think that that's very insightful. What we're aiming to do there is to find which is the model or the system that's going to be the most useful in this situation, right? There's a lot of mastery inside that. The two systems that you've mainly been drinking deeply of for a long time, spagyric alchemy and traditional Chinese medicine. I'm curious about some of the overlaps or the congruences in their conceptual maps.
Yeah. I absolutely love sharing this. And I think today, like I've been talking about being in communion and connecting with nature and listening to nature. And so I'd like to sort of take you on a journey where I can share with you about the Tria Prima from Spagyric Alchemy, the three fundamental principles, and the Sanbao, the three treasures of Chinese medicine, and how they are the same three treasures in different languages, and how these are like a metaphor or a pathway to describe the distillation of consciousness and being, the distillation of us as beings. And distillation is a process that elevates and evolves and purifies. And that through activating that process within ourselves, we can develop further abilities to connect with plants and nature through telepathy or lucid dreaming.
Awesome. Please explain the three treasures in these two systems.
Yeah. So in Spagyric alchemy, the tria prima is the alchemical triad, and we have salt, mercury, and sulfur. And salt is the body. It's the mineral salts. I'm going to use plants as the example because they're the best way to start, best place to start. And we're talking about herbalism. So the mineral matrix of a plant, you can kind of think of it as like the electrolyte skeleton of the plant body. And the mercury is the universal life force, or that creates energy and movement within something. So it's the life force that is common to all of us. It's not the unique Stephanie or the unique Fee. It's the fact that we both have cosmic universal life force within us that makes us alive, right? And mercury also translates to the most commonly used solvent in spagyric alchemy, which is alcohol, which is spirit. We're talking about universal spirit. And this is alcohol made from plants. So the mercury is also, when we extract the mercury from plants, we're talking about all the carboxylic acids and basically the bulk of what you'd get when you make a tincture, when you put a plant into alcohol. So you put your material into the mercury of the triad, which is the alcohol, and everything that the alcohol can draw out, which is some of the oils, but not all of them, all of the carboxylic acids and the general stuff that we see in a tincture that forms most of the medicine there. But the alcohol cannot extract the mineral salts, which I mentioned as being the salt. So we have the salt, we have the mercury, and then we have the sulfur. And the sulfur is what we would extract when we distill an essential oil, the things that can't really be extracted in full by the alcohol or with the salts. And so the sulfur represents the unique soul. So instead of having mind, body, spirit, what we have is body, universal spirit, and soul being the unique part. So when you smell an essential oil of any plant, you know what it is, basically, because it has a unique signature. You know you're smelling rose, or you're smelling eucalyptus, or you're smelling cedar. And these have very unique terpenes and scents and flavors, and everything about them brings that uniqueness of the plant. So you know who you're like, oh, hello, rose.
What kind of reminds me there is this feeling of how we have that same thing with people, right? Like
Yeah.
that the people we love, the way that my children, I'm sure, feel when they smell me, or that there's that deep recognition of that being through our olfaction.
Yeah.
And I also definitely noticed I've been working a lot with doing kind of deep plant listening and working with plants in my clinic on a kind of deep soul transformation level. And what I'm noticing is that the fresh plant tinctures that have a much higher volatile oil concentration, it feels like the personality and that unique soul of that plant is so much more present than the tinctures I used to use made with dry herbs, where there's so much loss of those volatile oils. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that vibrancy. You can actually sort of smell that it was tinctured live. Yeah. So we have the sulphur as the unique soul of the plant, like the consciousness of the individual, and the mercury being the universal life spirit, and the salt being the body. And to connect those three from spagyric alchemy to the sanbao, the three treasures in Chinese medicine or in Taoist Tantra, for example, we have Jing, Qi, and Shen. So Jing is the body. It's the form and essence, the base of the physical matter of the body, the genetics of the body, and our like sperm and ova, like the substrate materia of the physical life. And then we have Qi, which is the universal life force and energy that flows through everything. And then we have Shen, which is the unique soul or the consciousness of the individual, the unique individual's light of their mind and spiritual essence. And so Jing is salt, Mercury is Qi, and sulfur is Shen. And we have the same tria as a method of understanding that every single thing on this planet can be split into these three. These three categories cover all parts of every single being on this planet, but also the mineral kingdom. So in both traditions, these three can be transformed into one another as in a vertical path to cultivate higher states of being. So you can distill physical Jing into vital Qi and then sublimate that into pure Shen. And this is the pathway laid out by many meditation or tantric evolutionary practices for transforming and elevating or evolving your consciousness into higher states. And similarly, in alchemy, we separate the three parts, the sulphur and mercury, using distillation. We have to use fire to obtain the salts. They cannot be obtained through alcohol or solvents or distillation. The materia that's been distilled for the essential oils or tinctured for the mercury elements then has to be burnt, fully set on fire and burnt down to pure white ash, and all that's left is the electrolytes. And through that, then we use a method of washing and regrowing them as crystal salts. It's very beautiful. And you can actually see the patterns that the crystal salts form kind of look like the skeletal matrix of that plant. So, for example, the crystal salt patterns that grow for lavender sort of look like long and the way that lavender grows in like these long vertical stems with little branching flowers coming out versus other plants that will form maybe little hexagonal diamonds, or you can sort of see that natural matrix of the body.
Can I have a question in that? So if we're talking about the salts being on a very practical level, the mineral salts in a plant. So for example, nettle, which is really high in mineral salts, and we use it a lot for its mineral salts. From the spagyric alchemy perspective, and you know, you're much more experienced than me in medicine making and much more skilled. So I'm asking this as a novice in this space. So in my experience, then tincturing nettle doesn't get a lot of the mineral salts out, but I find then doing like a really long decoction with a little, splash of vinegar and then letting it sit overnight, that it does feel like there is much more of the salts in that preparation. And yeah, I'm hearing that from a spagyric perspective, it's only in the burning and the creating into ash that we really get those salts out. Do you think that any value of the mineral salts and the body of the plant is coming through in that slow decoction?
So yeah, salts are soluble in water, but if you want to get all the salts from so the idea with alchemy is that you're getting all the parts of the plant in their complete ratio that they were originally in, and then as you've extracted them separately, you then reunite them in the alchemical marriage. And something happens when you have the complete ratio in the alchemical marriage, for example. So you can do your decoction and you will get probably more of the salts that way by using water, and vinegar really helps to mobilize them. But if you wanted to get even more, for example, like all of them, and then you calcinate the plant and extract them that way. What you need to do is combine the salts with an alcohol extract, not with the water, because the magic happens when you combine it with the alcohol, just to be particular about that. And then when the alcohol tincture and the salts reunite and are married, and they need to sit together for a certain amount of time, it helps if you do it at a certain temperature with vacuum, etc. But there is a chemical reaction that occurs that then creates more medicinal molecules than what was originally there in the three separate parts. Right. So this is how you get an evolved medicine. And this is how we're talking about this distillation of consciousness, and it being a metaphor of like, okay, what if we separate everything into its parts and then put it all back together? If you do it in the right way, there's this process that occurs that then creates new parts that weren't there before. And there's purification that happens along the way. Like things are purified by fire, and they're purified by distillation, and they're purified by tincturing, and there's filtering that happens. And so what you're left with is not just we've turned what we originally had as a plant into a liquid form. It's that, okay, we've actually evolved it and created new medicinal molecules that are there. And that only happens when you mix the calcined electrolyte extract with the tinctured extract in the right way. So it has to be like 95, 96%.
I'm hearing like a difference there, that it's like it's not that calcination is the only way to get the mineral salts out, but if we're looking for this kind of higher order medicine, then there's a specific process of getting the exact kind of structure from each of those three parts.
Yes, because then that's when the alchemy occurs and something new evolves. And also, I would say that if you wanted to get more of the mineral salts out than what you're getting with a decoction, then you would make a spagyric. And then you can bring a decoction into the spagyric after the alchemical marriage to like dilute alcohol content. And there's ways to do that as well. So you can kind of get the best of all of those options. So we're sort of talking super full spectrum here.
Yeah. And actually, I think something just landed for me that I haven't understood about spagyrics before. A part of me has always thought, well, why not just eat the plant, right? Like that's the whole plant. They're all there in their specific ratios already existing, and I trust the intelligence of that plant. But I'm hearing almost a taking apart of all of those elements, a distillation, a purification, putting them back together so that they interact in new relationships, and through those new relationships and something new emerges that's a higher order.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the whole thing, because spagyrics is a lot of work too. So why, as a product manufacturer, would I put that upon myself? Like if it's easier to just let's just eat the plants. And the same thing with, well, I'm a whole being as I am, why would I meditate? Why would I evolve my consciousness? And it's like, well, because there is this alchemy that occurs where we translate what are baser elements into higher elements. We're talking about what the metaphor means to turn lead into gold.
It's a good question. I'm a whole being as I am, so why would I meditate or do anything to improve or to refine, right? Yeah.
Yeah. If we're coming from a place that says, we're not sin or anything, luckily I haven't had any really religious upbringing or anything. So saying, well, we're pretty good as we are. But I think this is like a gift given both ways in terms of what the message I want to share today, which is that in learning from nature, we understand how nature evolves things. Like evolution is nonstop. You can't stop it. There's no saying, hey, let's just pause human DNA where we're at. It's not going to happen. We're going to keep unfolding, and nature is looking for improvements in terms of the way that things survive. It doesn't mean that everything that's generated is an improvement, but just in terms of this two-way gift that I'm learning from nature how it evolves these things, and then that keys back into understanding this process of we go through deaths and rebirths, we go through difficulties, we go through challenges. It's happening on the planet en masse right now. Everyone's being pulled apart. There's so much divisiveness. So what's the point of that if we just come back together as we were previously? Because we're not going to be able to come back together as we were previously. We're going to come back together with these purified elements that can then, when they rejoin, actually evolve to the next stage.
What a prayer to hold that is. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that that really sank deep with me when I first learned about that, and why I really love using alchemy as a discussion for these things, and the importance for us to connect with nature. And if we're, becoming a herbalist, or I think you never stop becoming a herbalist. I'm still 25 years later, I'm still becoming a herbalist. and this process of if I further distill and evolve my state of being, my capacity of being, my capacity of consciousness, then what can also happen here is the results of that can be that I'm better at telepathy with plants. I'm more sensitive and able to engage in communion with nature and communicate with animals and plants. And also, this translates in lucid dreaming practice, where you're more able to become lucid in a dream state while you're asleep, and you're more able to have that moment of realization in your sleep. Oh, this is a realization, is that I'm dreaming. And we need to have the same realization when we're awake frequently. Like, if you're having an argument with someone, there can come a point where both of you sort of stop and pause and realize, hang on. You sort of wake up to the moment and realize what is the real issue here, because it's usually not whatever you're arguing about. It's usually, hang on, something else, some other truth needs to come forward here so that we can actually evolve this moment to a higher state and purify what isn't pure for us here, and move on from this and with a higher capacity for love, understanding, compassion, connection. So when we're looking at the transformation of Jing into Qi into Shen in tantric traditions, we're looking also at I'll just do a quick map of the chakras. We have the 7 chakras from the base to the sacral chakra just below the belly button, the solar plexus just where the rib cage parts, the heart chakra in the center of the chest, the throat chakra at the throat, the third eye chakra between the brows, and that's the pineal gland, and then the crown chakra on top of the head. And these work in pairs. So the crown chakra and the root chakra at the perineum are a pair. So we cannot be fully grounded in our body on this planet and be fully connected to the cosmos without doing those things in balance. It's really important to develop both together. Otherwise, you get imbalance. You'll get things like mental illness or your extreme poverty or something like that. And then, so we want to focus on the pair between the sacral chakra just below the belly button and the third eye. I'm going to come back to them. But the other pair is the throat and the solar plexus. For example, the way they work is the solar plexus is about your boundaries and your individual definition, that the healthy boundaries is for you as a unique soul, basically, not just always being part of the collective. And you can only express those boundaries using your voice. You need to use your voice to live or activate the solar plexus. That power doesn't exist unless you kind of speak it into being. And then the heart chakra being in the center as a center pivot with 3 either side. So if we come back to the sacral chakra, known as the sexual energy chakra just below the belly button, this is also where you'll be storing Jing, this Jing form essence of the body. If you're doing something like Qigong or any martial arts or practice, you're gathering energy and storing it just below the belly button. and that Jing, known as pure sexual energy as well, pure creative energy. We use that to make other human beings, to make babies. We use that with creating. So it's like, what are we creating? Well, we can create whatever we can envision, whatever we can imagine, whatever we can see. And so that's the pineal gland, the third eye, as its counterpart. And so when we're doing this distillation process through meditation or other practices where we're transforming Jing into Qi residing up in the chest, into Shen residing around the third eye pineal gland, crown area of the body, what we're doing is allowing this journey of that pure sexual life force energy up through the body, up through the central channels to the third eye, where it can develop our abilities with telepathy or lucid dreaming or any visionary aspects of consciousness. And they manifest in each of us in different ways. Like, it may not always be visual in terms of like psychic visual. It might be just forms of knowing, the embodied reception of knowing, and those feelings in the body translating from, let's say, a pure feeling like this is a yes or this is a no, into understanding, like cognizing and being able to put into words, this is the feeling that I have in all of its detail. It feels like, this, and that is an accurate read of the energy that you're perceiving. So there are sexual energy practices. There's all kind of tantric practices in terms of meditation and things like that. But we have this same metaphor of distillation going on that we have in the process of making medicine, that also describes our pathway for elevating our consciousness, purifying our consciousness, and then being able to have a greater facility for connecting with nature and plants, say telepathically or in a lucid dream. If you can dream and realize that you're dreaming and become lucid, then you can also call in plant teachers into that space. Like, if you realize you're dreaming, what should I do? Here I am, I'm dreaming. What do I do here? And instead of just living out a fantasy in that dream space, because you can do anything, like the cliche would be, great, I'll have a sex dream, or I'll eat 5 cakes, or I'll fly, or you know what I mean? Like, I'll indulge in these fantasies. But one thing you can do is turn it into a classroom and basically say, all right, well, I would like to learn from the acacia trees, and call in the acacia trees to come and teach you things, or animals. So it's a very potent way to connect. But if lucid dreaming is not so accessible to you, or if you want to learn it, reach out to me. But what I want to come back to this thing we were talking about with the potency of the smell of plants as a pathway to telepathy with plants. So, a little bit of story time. One of the first things I noticed when I started really engaging with nature in this sort of spiritually present way, like with the intent to connect, communicate, learn, was that after I had either perhaps taken a herb or a plant as a medicine, or as a type of journey ally, or a dieter of something. Some people, I know a lot of people like that word, that later on, when I had the plant nowhere near me, I would occasionally just smell it. Sometimes it's like the waft of a plant's spirit would just pass by me or pass through me, and it was like, why can't I smell roses right now? Where's the rose? And you look for the rose, and there's no rose. There's no one's wearing rose oil. There's no physical presence of this plant, and yet I could smell it. And so I started to realize that Rose is like calling me. And Rose is messaging me right now. Like, I'm getting a text message from Rose. Rose is on the phone. And that this this scent was it seemed to me that it was a preferred way for the plants to make contact, that they can come to us. And certain plants are like much more in the affinity of communicating that way than others. That's in my experience anyway, or maybe they were just certain plants that I had that journey with. So it's really interesting when you look at how the olfactory system works, our ability to smell as a scent, because it's pre-conscious of all the senses, the five major, physical senses, taste, touch, smell, sight, sound. Our sense of smell operates on two processing pathways that are different to the other physical senses. So, unlike sight, sound, or touch, or taste, the smelling sense or olfactory signals don't pass through the thalamus, which is the brain's like sensory relay station, you could call it. Instead, smell travels directly to the amygdala, which processes emotion, and the hippocampus, which handles memories. And it's like you can kind of receive a memory of this telepathic message from the roses, and it comes with the smell, and then suddenly you know something about roses that you didn't before. And it's also an unconscious influence. For example, smells can trigger an immediate autonomic nervous system response, like a hormonal change, or a rapid emotional or behavioral judgment can change before we even consciously register that we're smelling something. So for us to identify smell, the signal, the signal has to then be rerouted back through to the thalamus, and we can basically be unconsciously impacted by our smell, the scent environment, milliseconds before our rational brain catches up and is like, oh, I'm smelling something.
When you talk about scent bypassing the rational mind, it's interesting. I've read of some really beautiful studies looking at scent and dementia and Alzheimer's, and how there is some aromatherapy studies in Europe in old people in like care homes of high needs elderly people, and finding that it was actually one of the best supports for people was aromatherapy, looking at different kind of oils, and there was something about the way that it was speaking to them by bypassing the part of the brain that kind of didn't work anymore, right? And they were really reassuring, and all people mood improvements and sleep improvement and even memory improvements. At that, I wanted to love that study's happening, right? And it does speak to the special place that olfaction has in the cognitive landscape of the human brain.
Right, right. So it can bypass also certain conscious blocks that we might have. So because it's going through the amygdala first, which processes emotion and memory, we can have whole memories triggered by a smell. So that's really good for memory loss, is to reactivate those pathways, and then we'll bring up the emotions as well. So that can be really helpful as a therapy. And in another way, I think that also helps us experience the state or connect with or drop into the state of telepathy with nature, which requires for us to not be thinking so loud, not be like yammering on in an internal dialogue, and to drop out of those beta brainwaves into more of an alpha or a deep theta state, which is why lucid dreaming is so excellent, because we're deeply in that state when we're asleep. And we can just be operating more so in this pure presence state. And so if you notice that you can smell a herb or a plant at any point in time, and you know it's not physically there, just pause for a moment and be like, oh, okay, hello. And
A visitation from that plant spirit.
yeah, experience the visitation, kind of pause and experience the visitation, and try not to think about it or analyze it. Just be there with it. And even if the smell has gone before you kind of register that you smelt it, just sit with the memory of that smell for a moment, like pause your doings and just come into being with that fleeting experience you just had. And it's the same thing we need to do when we wake up and we're trying to recall a dream. Because if you don't recall it during those initial moments, if you start get up and moving your body and thinking about other things, the dream becomes really fleeting, just like that telepathic plant scent has fleeted by. And so, yeah, it's about pausing into that moment and using your memory to recall the scent, and then you can have this kind of origami telepathy experience where it opens up into knowings, like information. In my case anyway, information just kind of arrives there whole. It's not like it doesn't come through like a conversation in sentences. But that part can be different for everyone. Sometimes you'll see something. Sometimes you'll kind of know.
That it's like, rather than it being information, which I think is more cognitive, there's just a feeling of insight, like a sense of seeing into and perceiving something in a new or deeper way.
Mm.
Yeah. I want to just speak a bit more about lucid dreaming, because I think that this is something that is fascinating. I've never done any lucid dreaming, and what you're speaking to around, like the idea of lucid dreaming, to be able to study and learn from plants and communicate from plants, because in a way we're already in the perfect kind of limbic brain state to be able to do that, is makes me much more interested in lucid dreaming. Because previously I'm like, well, whatever, I don't really care if I'm making the orgies of my dreams or eating all the gluten in the world in the dream space. But that, what you're speaking to is like, finally I'm like, oh, that's why we would lucid dream, that's why it's worth cultivating that skill, of course. And I feel like I have done some guided trance that I like record for myself and do in order to try to enter into that kind of state and communication with plants, right? But surely in the dream world, it's going to be so much deeper and richer, because we're not having to try to get ourselves there. We're already just there. So it's just super exciting. And I want to hear a little bit more about your process. Like, what would you recommend to someone who is really new to that? How would you start flexing that capacity?
So true. And I just want to say it's great to have this conversation with you, because you've just jumped in on one of the most important teachings of lucid dreaming. And that is that not only is it that we have this opportunity to do so much more than pure fantasy, but that if we do overly indulge in pure fantasy, we're cultivating the controlling aspect of our own nature. We're cultivating the escapist and controlling aspect of our own nature. So even though it can be a little helpful in the early stages of lucid dream yoga, which is one of the Tibetan names for the practice, to okay, now I'm lucid and I didn't wake up immediately or lose lucidity immediately. What can I do? So there are a number of practices, and there's things you can do with your diet and your pre-sleep routine. And there are waking practices you can do to help sustain lucidity, because that's the hard part, is how do I stay lucid and just hover in this state of consciousness once I'm there? And a lot of that has to do with not getting too excited and not getting too fearful. So in Taoism, they talk about grasping and aversion. And you don't want to be too excited, too much grabbing onto the world or the dream experience. And you don't want to be too afraid of it. But sometimes you'll realize you're dreaming because something really scary is happening. And you'll be like, oh, hang on, this is a dream, thank goodness. And there'll be different triggers that, like, if I try to use my phone in a dream, it always shows me I'm dreaming because the numbers are swirling and I can't. And then eventually through that frustration, I'm like, oh, hang on, this is a dream. Like, my phone's not behaving like a phone. So that's one of my ins. So you can develop lots of ways in, but once you're there, if you can hover, the first thing is it teaches you to hover in this kind of state of what I describe as being like cool as a cucumber. Like, yeah, wow. Like, it is an ecstatic experience to simply become lucid in a dream. You realize you're dreaming. It is an ecstatic realization. And to just kind of stay with that cool as a cucumber instead of grasping onto it, and just seeing how long you can just kind of surf that wave, so to speak. And it's a bit of a balancing act. And then, if you can, then remember your intention, which can change over time. But let's say your intent is to call in a particular plant and see it from that state and learn about it from that state. To then just focus on it. Like, you might just be like, oh, I'm dreaming. Okay. And you just let the fantasy dream dissolve. Usually it does dissolve. Whatever's going on in the dream that had you captured and unconscious, that dissolves. And this is a really good metaphor for the awakening of our consciousness as well, is that the illusions dissolve, right? And we start to see with more and more clarity. We start to have realization within each moment more and more frequently. More moments become available for us to have realization. And obviously, the nature of the realization can change with each day, each moment, each circumstance. But let's say I realize I'm dreaming and I just think, okay, rose. I want to connect with rose. The roses. There might be a particular species, subspecies, whatever. And then just receive what comes to you in that state, and you'll find it's far more psychic. And for me, my lucid dreams are also precognitive. I can see things that will then happen later. I see the future. It's different for everyone. Like, we all have different superpowers that will unfold once we engage in this distillation of consciousness. But that is a really beautiful, that's the higher space to enter, rather than indulging in your escapist and fantasy tendencies. And when I said you'll cultivate your controlling nature by doing that, every time we do something, every time we make a decision to focus our attention a certain way, we're developing those neural pathways. We are becoming the pathways that we repeatedly walk along. So we don't want to develop that escapist pathway or that controlling nature. What we want to do is walk along new pathways, which the one I'm suggesting is to ask to be shown things about the nature of life, the universe, nature, whatever you're learning, plants, herbal medicine. You can also develop physical skills. Your brain has a map of your body and your body's capacity. And at one point, I had a shoulder surgery when I was 17, and since then I've had a series of issues with my shoulder and that scar tissue. And at one point, I was having real trouble doing anything like an up dog, down dog, or a chaturanga or a push up type of move. And so I found myself lucid in a dream at a certain time when I was experiencing a flare up of the shoulder, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do lots of vinyasa yoga in this lucid dream body where it's not impinged by the shoulder scarring. And I did lots of them, and then eventually I lost lucidity, or I woke up. And I'm not kidding you, I went from being able to do about 3 push-ups that week before there was pain to immediately I could do 10 that day. And it sustained from thereafter. So it changed my brain's map, my body's capacity by visualizing. So we know that sports, so people who are training for the Olympics have to visualize themselves doing the things. You know, the ice skaters and the ski jumpers have to visualize themselves pulling off the triple flip pike thing in order to be able to do it physically. And so it's a very magnified potency state in which you can visualize yourself with a skill, or you open yourself up to learning a new skill, and you can become that. you're developing those pathways.
I'm sure that that also just translates to the waking mind as well. You're talking about them visualizing in the waking mind, but then if we're doing it in the lucid dreaming, it's almost like it must enter more deeply because we don't have that barrier of the cognitive rational
Mhm.
self.
Right. And I think I would say it's like at least 100 times potency.
Wow. I mean, maybe I could sit there and visualize myself lucid dreaming. Is that like something to
Yeah.
start to build that
Yes.
capacity in myself?
So the best daily practice is get your phone. Most of us have a smartphone. Set the alarm for like 2, 3 times a day. And it just says, like on the alarm, where you can write a little note, what the alarm says, just write, I am dreaming. And do it in first person. So the alarm goes off, pick up your
Mm,
phone, it says, I am dreaming. You turn off the alarm and you say to yourself, I'm dreaming. And just let yourself experience that moment as if you were realizing that moment's a dream. Because
mm.
the brain actually never stops dreaming, even when we're awake. It's just that the data of the physical plane dominates what we're
Mm.
processing.
And just to dig down on that, are you suggesting that when we get that alarm, that we allow ourselves to feel that life itself is a dream and that we are, constantly in this overlay, this mental reconstructed overlay on reality, and then that's the dream, the Maya? Or
Yeah.
are you suggesting that we imagine ourselves to be sleep dreaming and what that would feel like to train that capacity for the nighttime?
I mean, I'm all about both. Do both. Becoming lucid, whether you're asleep or you're awake, is having a moment of realization where
Mm.
whatever is illusion in that moment can melt away, dissolve away, and you become present to a deeper experience of the moment, a more true experience of the moment.
And letting the story of the mind go in that moment to come into, more lucidity. Yeah, great. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna set my alarm on my smartphone as soon as we finish this episode. I'm gonna see what
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah. And I'm not, when I say that, I don't believe the physical plane is all illusion. I think it's all
Mhm.
real. All the planes are real.
Mm.
And we're perceiving all of them. We're just filtering out a lot of information.
Mm. Yeah, and there is a kind of dreamlike overlay on top of the physical plane, even when we are in the physical, unless we are very good at stilling the mind, which I'm
Mm.
not. That there is a very strong overlay of my thoughts and my perceptions and my emotional state, and that's affecting my experience of what the physical plane actually is, right?
Yeah, yeah. And especially, like I was saying earlier, when we're stressed or we're caught in drama or pain or conflict with someone,
Mm.
um, our
Yeah.
experience of the moment is very colored by everything we're bringing to it.
Mm. Do you know actually what that makes me think of is like when I'm really premenstrual and I'm having this moment of like, oh my God, my life is terrible. The older I'm getting a bit more dysphoric with PMS. Everything's terrible. I'm a failure. I'm a terrible mother. And my relationship is on the rocks. All this crazy stuff. And then I have this moment where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm premenstrual. It's all right.
Mm.
Like I can see the dream of that. The story of that I'm in, that I'm possessed by. And there's a moment of becoming lucid in that moment. Okay, I'm still having all the feelings, but actually I'm running a story that's really being affected by my hormonal landscape. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which leads me to one of the other reasons why we might want to cultivate the ability to become lucid, and that is that it's one of our best protections or immunities against all types of mind control systems and like advertising
Mm.
and false messaging that's coming to influence our perception.
Yeah. That is a big topic to bring in right at the end there. But yes, I think another thread that's been through this conversation that I just really want to touch on briefly, or I should at least point to, and I think I see it inside Chinese medicine in a way that I've never seen it inside Western herbalism, and it's this expectation or this belief that it is incumbent upon you as someone who is a healer or a space holder or someone who's supporting other people on a journey of healing. is incumbent upon you to do the inner work that's required to be able to be a pure or like a higher version of yourself, right? And when I did a couple of acupuncture classes, not because I wanted to practice, I just wanted to know what was there, right? And the teacher was saying, well, you have to do qigong. If you don't do qigong, then the qi isn't flowing properly through you, and so when you're placing the needles there, you're not activating it in the right way. And I remember that there's nothing in all my years of study. You can see you not totally agreeing, but I guess I still want to point to this fact that I'm hearing in what you're saying that for as healers, as herbalists, as plant people, as people on this earth wanting to hold space in that way, that we will do that better the more we cultivate our three treasures, the more we cultivate sublimation, right? The alchemical process of our own becoming.
Mm. I absolutely agree with that. I guess I did a little head wobble because people can't see this, but when you were saying you absolutely have to do qigong, I guess I was just like, well, yeah, and I've done a lot of qigong, and we do it as part of our acupuncture degree. There's a qigong as a subject just to get us all into having had that experience as well of cultivating qi that way. But just that there are many ways that we can cultivate qi, not just one way. And I think, one of the first things you learn about doing acupuncture from the classics, the ancient classic texts, is that when you're needling someone, to have the presence as if there's a tiger in the room. So it's kind of teaching people to be like, be here, don't be like thinking about that text you have to send or something else, or don't be somewhere else. Like if there was a tiger in the room, you would be here. You would be in your a more primal awareness state of consciousness. And to kind of take that presence with energy as being core or central to the job.
Yeah. I love that. And I would extend that to, can we bring that level of primal awareness when we're working with plants? If you're harvesting herbs, or you're making medicines, or you're mixing herbs for a client, or you're in clinical space with someone, or even if you're just like making your cup of tea for yourself, that's like a medicinal tea that you're hoping to bring, that it will bring something to your healing and to your body, to have that level of presence when we engage with the plants, because I think that's like the substrate that allows the kind of medicinal power to emerge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That this is my medicine and love it, because you're asking it to you and to heal you and to be there with it and to smell it. And I think that smelling medicine is such an important piece of the activity of the medicine, almost to the point where I think pills can work, like pill version of herbs formed into pills. But if they're pills where there's no scent or taste, it's almost like you're bypassing some of the body's ability to register that it's been given this medicine. So that's what I also love about spagyric liquid extracts, is that you can smell it, you can taste it, and then it goes down and it's absorbed and starts to do its thing very quickly.
So I'm going to just point people to some of the many incredible things that you do, and I think that one of them is that you do offer private coaching on lucid dreaming, which is really an awesome opportunity, and it's on my list now of things to do when my children are slightly older. Get some coaching on lucid dreaming from Fee. And you're also, I'm sure you do that online, you do astrology readings as well, and you've just opened a new acupuncture Chinese medicine clinic in Mullumbimby, as well as an incredible array of powerful and, can I just say, really well thought out and designed plant medicine. I've made a lot of medicine and a lot of product design, and I can see that there's a level of sophistication you're bringing to your work in your lab that's just really exciting and beautiful to see. So I encourage people to go check your website out, which is BioHerboloQi, and I will put that in the show notes, of course. Thank you so much for being here, Fee. We've got to gone down 10 different rabbit holes in that conversation of an hour each, so maybe we'll get you back on here another time to explore some of those finer points.
Yeah, I'm always happy to do a part 2. And yeah, at my website bioherbology.com, there's about 20 products now. They're like 80% Chinese medicine, but there's also a lucid dreaming spagyric using a South African plant medicine that's really special, and it comes with some instruction and ritual that you'll receive as like a PDF when you buy it. And there's going to be a lot more products. That's my focus, really, is being in the lab with the products and making and designing things. So there's going to be a lot more Chinese herbal formulas as liquid extracts. There's going to be more skincare and body care. And yeah, it's super fun. I just love being alone with the plants and smelling them. And basically, they're asking me to make these things with them. And so
Yeah,
here
well,
they
so if
come.
the plants are like the co-designers, it's going to come out the way it's meant to be. They are the master alchemists after all.
Yeah. Sometimes I have beautiful ingredients or access to beautiful rare ingredients, and I spend a while like communicating with the plant, like what do I need to make? And other times I instantly know what I need to make, and then I'll find the ingredients. So it can really vary.
Thanks, Fee.
Thanks for having me on your show. It's been a great conversation.
That's us for this moon cycle. I'm so glad you walked into the dark forest with me. This podcast is part of The Elder Tree, a non-profit dedicated to empowering people through grassroots herbal education, weaving a strong community of herbalists, healers, and plant folk in Australia. You can head over to theeldertree.org to find out more. If you like this episode, we'd love you to subscribe. And if you know who we should interview next, drop us a line. See you next month, and in the meantime, may you be blessed with good health and many plants.